Ethan had always believed he could read people, not perfectly, not like a mind reader, but he understood the small things, a nervous glance, a forced smile, the hesitation before a lie. By 28, he had developed a quiet confidence in his instincts. Friends often asked for his opinion of people they had just met. More often than not, he was right. The old man next door seemed harmless. Walter Harris lived alone in a weathered blue house surrounded by flower beds he tended every morning. He was 73 years old, soft-spoken and unfailingly polite. Children waved at him on their way to school. Neighbors chatted with him over fences. Every December he baked cookies for the entire street. If evil wore a face, Ethan was certain it wasn't Walter's. Then Daisy saw him. The shepherd mix had never shown aggression toward anyone. She adored strangers. Mail carriers received enthusiastic greetings. Delivery drivers earned wagging tails. Visitors rarely made it through the front door before she demanded attention. One afternoon, Walter approached the fence separating their properties. "Beautiful day," he called. Daisy trotted toward him. Then she stopped. Her body locked rigid. The fur along her spine rose. A deep growl rumbled from her throat. Walter froze. The old man looked genuinely surprised. Slowly, he raised a hand in greeting. Daisy bared her teeth. The sound that emerged from her chest was unlike anything Ethan had ever heard. Not fear, hatred, pure and immediate. Walter lowered his hand. For a moment, hurt flickered across his face. Then he quietly returned to his yard. The encounter lasted less than 30 seconds, yet Ethan found himself replaying it throughout the evening. Dogs sensed things humans missed. At least that was what people always claimed. The thought lingered. By morning, it had become a question. By the end of the week, it had become an obsession, because Daisy never stopped reacting. Every glimpse of Walter triggered the same response. The growling, the raised fur, the fixed stare. Sometimes she would sit at the window for hours watching his house, waiting. Animals knew things. Animals saw things. Perhaps Walter wasn't the kind old man everyone believed him to be. Perhaps Daisy saw the truth hiding underneath. The possibility settled into Ethan's thoughts like a splinter beneath the skin. Impossible to ignore, painful to leave alone. So he began watching. At first it seemed harmless. A glance through the blinds, a note about when Walter left the house, a few observations scribbled into a notebook. Nothing more. Then Walter drove away after midnight. The notebook gained another page. A few nights later, he returned carrying several large black bags into his garage. Another page. Soon, Ethan was tracking dates, times, patterns. The notebook filled quickly. At first, the entries were simple. Walter left at 11:43 p.m., returned at 1:12 a.m. Garage lights on for 47 minutes. But over time, the notes became longer. Walter spent long stretches in his basement. What was he hiding down there? Questions multiplied faster than answers, and throughout it all, Daisy watched. She spent hours staring toward Walter's house. Sometimes she growled. Sometimes she simply sat motionless, waiting, observing. Months passed. Ethan's suspicion became certainty. Then came the cemetery. One cold evening, Ethan followed Walter's car through winding roads to the edge of town. Rain tapped against the windshield. The cemetery gate stood open. Walter entered carrying a bouquet of white lilies. Ethan parked nearby and watched. The old man stopped beside a headstone. For nearly an hour, he remained there, talking, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying. The sight unsettled Ethan. Not because it looked suspicious, because it didn't. Walter looked exactly like what he appeared to be. A lonely old man grieving someone he loved. For the first time, doubt entered Ethan's mind. When Walter finally drove away, Ethan approached the grave. The stone belonged to Walter's wife. The date of death was 5 years earlier. Nothing unusual, nothing hidden, nothing dark, just loss. Ethan returned home feeling foolish. The feeling lasted less than a day. The next afternoon, Daisy erupted into furious barking when Walter appeared in his yard. Her entire body shook, her lips peeled back from her teeth. The old doubt vanished. Animals didn't lie. Animals knew. Walter had simply fooled everyone else, including Ethan. The obsession deepened. Soon Ethan was searching public records, old newspaper archives, court documents, property records, anything connected to Walter Harris. Hours became days, days became weeks. He found nothing, no arrests, no accusations, no scandals. 38 years as a school teacher, a respected member of the community, a widower, a gardener, a grandfather. The evidence suggested Walter was exactly who he appeared to be. Ethan ignored it. One night he crossed the property line. He told himself he only wanted answers. The truth was less noble. He wanted validation. He wanted proof. The basement window sat partially uncovered. A faint light glowed within. Ethan crouched beneath it and looked inside. Shelves lined the walls, boxes, old furniture, photographs, nothing remotely sinister. Then he saw Walter. The old man sat alone in a chair. A framed photograph rested in his hands. His shoulders trembled. He was crying, not performatively, not suspiciously. Simply crying. The kind of grief that arrives years late and never truly leaves. Walter whispered something to the photograph, then smiled sadly. For a moment he looked impossibly small, a lonely man speaking to ghosts that existed only in memory. Shame crept into Ethan's chest, slow and cold. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe he had wasted months chasing shadows. Maybe Daisy. A growl sounded behind him. Ethan nearly jumped out of his skin. Daisy stood several feet away, watching. The dog had somehow slipped out of the house unnoticed. Rain dripped from her fur. Her eyes reflected the basement light. For a moment they seemed strangely bright. Then she turned and trotted away. That night, Ethan dreamed of Walter. The old man stood beside his bed holding a knife. The blade gleamed. His smile stretched impossibly wide. Ethan woke, gasping. Daisy sat beside the bed, watching him. The nightmares continued. Every night brought new horrors. Walter dragging bodies, Walter digging graves, Walter standing silently at the foot of the bed. The dreams felt real, more real than dreams should. Sleep became something to fear. Weeks passed, and exhaustion settled into Ethan's bones. His thoughts grew fractured, his emotions swung wildly. He confronted Walter twice. The first encounter ended with confused apologies. The second ended with frightened silence. The old man no longer waved, no longer smiled. He crossed the street whenever Ethan approached. The neighborhood noticed. Whispers followed. The police eventually arrived, not for Walter, for Ethan. A concerned neighbor had reported disturbing behavior. The officers asked questions. Ethan answered poorly. After they left, he laughed alone in his kitchen for nearly 10 minutes. The laughter ended in tears. He stopped going to work, stopped shaving, stopped answering the door. The notebook had swollen into several notebooks. Entire walls became covered with photographs, timelines, and theories. Every thread led nowhere. Every conclusion contradicted another. Yet he could not stop. Because if Walter wasn't guilty, then what had destroyed Ethan's life? The answer arrived on a cold autumn night. The house sat in darkness. Ethan huddled beneath a blanket in the living room. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands trembled. Across the room, Daisy sat perfectly still, watching him. The clock struck 3:33 a.m. A soft sound echoed through the room. A sigh, not Ethan's, not human. Daisy slowly stood. Every hair on Ethan's body rose. The dog tilted its head. A black shape emerged from her open mouth. Not smoke, not shadow, something older, something that refused to remain a single shape for more than a heartbeat. The thing stretched itself free. Daisy collapsed onto the floor, whimpering.
I was beginning to think you'd never break.
The voice was ancient, dry, amused.
Uncertainty, suspicion, paranoia. The little poisons humans love to drink. I feed on the intoxication they cause.
It paused as if to savor the thought.
Your mind has been delightful to devour.
The nightmares, the obsession, Walter. The creature laughed.
Walter was exactly what he seemed. A sweet old man, a lonely widower, a thoroughly disappointing monster.
The entity drifted toward the front door, satisfied. Ethan barely noticed. Daisy crawled toward him, whining softly, seeking comfort. Ethan recoiled into the corner. His eyes were empty, his mind shattered. The walls around him were covered in evidence of his madness. Friendships destroyed, a career lost, and an innocent old man Ethan had terrorized. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like another original story inspired by a random prompt, make sure to return again soon.